Hey guys, it's me again, T, here to bring you another video of me rambling for 6 to 8 minutes. Today I want to do a video comparing my life in Korea with my life in Spain. I don't know what my hand is doing right now. This is not going to be a video about teaching in Korea versus teaching in Spain because I have a whole plethora of things that I want to talk about regarding that. So I'm going to hold off, but I do want to just kind of talk about my life and how for me it's varied. I spent about 15 months in Spain. I'm towing the line of my year anniversary in Korea. I'm a teacher in Korea. I was the same in Spain. In Korea, I'm a private school teacher. In Spain, I was a public school teacher. Comparing the two in 10 seconds, Spain is better, period. I didn't even need 10 seconds. But as far as the job goes, Spain wins, hands down. The second topic I wanted to cover is going to be racism / being black. I'm going to skim over because I want to make a completely separate video for this. Again, hands down, Spain wins. Now moving on to topics that I can really get into. The first one, and I think for any young person, the most important one, is social life, nightlife. I lived in southern Spain, in Malaga. The nightlife in Malaga was forgettable. It was a very young vibe. There was a ton of cheap booze, which I am all about that life. But as far as going and liking the music and then having there be cute people around you, I mean, I just like me some brown skin. There was no type of eye candy for me in Spain. And it's pretty much EDM and top 40 all the time. There is a finite amount of times that I can listen to Kesha's Timber blast on repeat. I can't. I love that I didn't have to get dressed up because there was no one I wanted to date. Here in Korea, I have to admit I am biased because in the city I live in, Daegu, and honestly, in most Korean cities, there is a ratchet club. I shouldn't call it ratchet. I mean, it is, but I love it. It's called Juilliard's. I can go there, I can listen to my hip hop. They smoke indoors, so you're gonna leave smelling like a 60-year-old chain-smoking man, but you're gonna listen to hip-hop, pretty much things that are on the radio in America, you're gonna hear here. There's another nightclub, Club Frog. You know, a girl likes to turn up every now and again. In Korea, going out to eat is pretty expensive. It's just like in America, except there's no tips, so you do save a little bit, but everything is indoors. In Spain, however, everything is outside and everything is super cheap and nobody rushes you. You want to go out for tapas? Sure. I would get paella, tortilla de patata, a tinto de verano, or 2 or 3. I could chill out on the patio, and especially Malaga being in southern Spain, Costa del Sol, so it's warm a lot, it's sunny a lot, so you can just go out and be out and hang out. Another super important one, the people you encounter. The locals are very important. I don't want to make it a contest, but you know, Spain be winning. Spain, it was a bit easier for me, and I do have to acknowledge a real bias that I spoke the language, so there was just certain barriers that I didn't have to face. But even when I first got to Spain, I had language difficulties because I was very timid about my Spanish, but it was just a real cool vibe, a real open vibe. In any country, I just feel like when you get to the warm coastal areas, people are just nicer and more chilled out and just super cool, so maybe that had something to do with it. In Korea, they're much colder. I was running one day and I fell and I face planted. Men in their 20s were waiting for the bus, looked over at me and looked away. Nothing. Sometimes you'll encounter Koreans that can understand exactly what you're saying and just won't want to speak English. They say they're shy, but I'm rolling my eyes at that one. They're shy when it's convenient. I can't tell you if I spoke the language, if that would be different. I live in Daegu, and I've heard from my Korean friends who live in other parts of the country that Daegu is notoriously conservative. Because I know I'm gonna have some Korea boos all up in my comments talking about some, you don't like Korea, why don't you leave? Girl, bye. The next key point, and at this point I've lost count of what number I'm on, something I'm gonna call the barriers to entry. When I got to Spain, literally the day I got to Spain, I hit the ground running. I got my cell phone and I'd already started my apartment hunt. In Korea, while I don't have to look for an apartment because apartments usually come with the job you get, some people choose to do a housing stipend. In Spain, because there's so many exchange students and the cost of living is very low, it's super easy to find an apartment. I moved to Spain in 2013, found my first apartment within like 5 days. You literally show up, you give them your money, you get a key, you meet your roommates, and it's done. To get a cell phone, if you go in with your passport or your residency card, either will work. You go in, you get a prepaid chip, you can have data, SMS, and calls. Super simple. In Korea, not as easy. Even for a prepaid plan, a lot of them suck. You get like almost no data. You'll get to use Wi-Fi in certain places. I think if you're very bare minimal on cell phone usage, it works out. You pretty much have to get a plan. They're 2-year contracts. Usually you have to get a Korean phone. To get an apartment in Korea, obviously you have to sign a lease, because since everybody lives at home till they're like 40. No, I'm kidding. But since Koreans live at home until they get married, there's not a lot of shared rooms or people looking for roommates. I'm not sure about this because I've never had to do it, but I'm pretty sure it requires first rent, last rent, and key money. Key money is like exorbitant amounts. You can be putting anywhere from like 2 million won to 10 million won in key money. If I'm moving to Korea pretty quickly, I may not have all that money racked up. I don't really understand why they make money off of my rent and off of my key money. I know it's an Asian thing. I know they do it in Japan and probably other countries. The other part of my lifestyle that is very different is travel, or better yet, the travel I did in Spain and the lack thereof in Korea. I am a Hagwon teacher. We pretty much work year-round. In Spain, I had ample time to travel. It's super cheap travel. Thank you EasyJet, and thank you Vueling. I lived in a city with an international airport, and I had a 3-day weekend every weekend. I went to Rome for like 80 euros round trip, and in Korea I just don't have those opportunities. I don't live near an international airport. I think if I lived in Seoul it might be slightly different, but from Daegu, it just doesn't really work for me. I feel really stuck. And the last thing I want to talk about is healthcare, which for me has been 2 completely opposite experiences. In Spain, I never went to the doctor. WebMD got me through it. Shrug. In Korea, they do with specialized doctors a lot. So there's a doctor for your ears, nose, and throat. There's a doctor for breaking bones. There's a doctor for sprained things. And in America, we usually have separate doctors, usually like joint practices. In Korea, no, they are separate entities that work independent of each other. So that can be a little overwhelming. Just like in Spain, things cost next to nothing here. Like doctors here speak like really surprising amount of English. Now I can't compare that to Spain since I never went to a doctor in Spain, but I can compare it to the pharmacist, where my pharmacist in Spain knew the medical names for the drugs but couldn't really speak to me. Even when they started with me in English, once they realized my Spanish was good, they would switch over to Spanish because they just didn't know how to say certain things. Whereas in Korea, a lot of doctors and a lot of pharmacists know textbook medical English. There's just a super huge bank of information on the internet to find a doctor. Women's hospital, about a 5-minute stroll from here. At my corner, there is an ear, nose, throat doctor. Across the street, there is a general clinic. At the end of the next block for muscle injuries. So pretty much anything that could possibly go wrong with me, I don't even have to go far. That's something that in Korea, I'm just like blown away. So that is my video. I am going to do a separate video about teaching in Spain and Korea. I'm also going to do a video on being Black in Spain. Keep leaving comments. I try to respond to them, but sometimes I just don't really have anything to say. And I really just like to see people's different perspectives. And please subscribe. When I get emails that people subscribe, I'm like, oh wait, no, people want to watch this. I should make more. And thank you guys for watching another installment of me on my struggle couch. Bye bye.